I have such deep love for every victim, all their families, every person injured, and everybody who survived, like myself, who's struggling with PTSD. I just have an unwavering, lifelong connection to them, and I'll never, ever forget about them.
That was 2 years ago. The man's name is Brian Claypool, as he was remembering the deadly shooting in Las Vegas that happened 3 years ago today. Remember, 58 lives were lost. Gosh, like 700 people were wounded. It was such a horrible scene. Well, this morning, it is news again because of an $800 million class action settlement has been approved against Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. That's the hotel where the shooter fired from that horrible night. And here's Brian now. So 3 years after the fact, Brian, hey, good morning to you. And he's not only a survivor, but he's an attorney now representing like 150 other survivors. 3 years ago, Brian, how does this attack still affect you every day?
Yeah, hey, Robin, nice to be back with you on what I consider to be a pretty sobering day. Had trouble getting to sleep last night. Believe it or not, I'm still grappling with the PTSD. The biggest thing that affects me, Robin, still after the shooting, a couple things. I hardly ever feel safe, even when I'm in my own house. Sometimes I'll go into the kitchen. I've got these windows around the kitchen, and I'll look outside and I'll think that somebody's going to point a gun in there and shoot me. I'll be on the freeway. I'll be at a stoplight. Car comes up next to me. I'll look over, and I just, for some reason, I expect that I'm going to be shot at. I still don't like being around a lot of people in social settings. When I'm out walking, I'm always looking over my shoulder. So in the end, I don't think I'm ever going to be the way I was before the shooting. A part of my soul was killed forever in that shooting, even though I wasn't physically injured. And one other thing I want to comment on is just day-to-day activities sometimes, even as a trial lawyer, are challenging for me. Like, I feel like I'm sapped still of some energy in my body and soul. So, it's still an upward and onward challenge, but I've been in a lot of therapy, still in therapy. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and that is I would imagine feelings like that manifest themselves in different ways for every single person that survived that horrible day. Now, for the settlement here, it took months of negotiations before all sides agreed to a settlement. Do you know, how is the number agreed upon?
Yeah, so there was about a 2 to 3 month mediation process. What that means is lawyers for the victims met with lawyers for MGM, and also I believe there were a little over 20 insurance companies involved. So it took nearly 3 months of negotiating back and forth. And Robin, the big issue was to get, or I should say the biggest challenge was really to get all the insurance companies for MGM on board to pay what's called their policy limits, so that we can get enough money together to help the victims who step forward. So it was a dogfight, but in the end, I feel like this really is the best result for a couple of reasons. Number one, all of the victims are not going to be re-traumatized by having to go through detailed and copious depositions. Nobody wants to be questioned for 8 hours about this shooting. And then number two, there were some legal hurdles that we had to overcome to really win this case. For example, whether Mandalay Bay even owed a legal duty to the victims, because remember, we were across the street at a concert. We were not on the property of Mandalay Bay. So that was a challenge as well. And then also to prove that it was reasonably foreseeable, that a shooting like this would happen. So we had some hurdles. And then remember, I think I talked to you about what's called the Safety Act. MGM was bringing up that. And, if a judge or jury determined that this was related to a terroristic attack, then all the victims lose. So we really wanted to get the victims some reasonable compensation to help them move on with their lives.
The journey is ongoing, I see that you said before, and won't cease when the case ends. So what happens when the courtroom lights go off for you, Brian?
Yeah, great question. This is bittersweet. I mean, I really feel good about the result myself and our team of lawyers did to get compensation. I'll never forget the 58 precious souls who died. We'll never forget them and their families. I'll never forget those who were shot. We represent many shooting victims, and those who were trampled, who've had many surgeries, still fighting physical ailments every day. And then I'll never forget the thousands like myself who will grapple with PTSD the rest of our lives. But Robin, that's the legal side of this. Make no mistake about it. The $800 million question remaining for many years to come is whether companies like MGM and other big businesses will learn from this lawsuit and this shooting, because the lawsuit was a vehicle to get to the truth so that we can make social change. So I will not end my quest to continue to fight for improved security and also to fight with Congress to enact the assault weapon ban. So the lights might go out in the courtroom in a few days, but this fight will continue for decades to come, Robin.
Brian Claypool on his thoughts about the experience, about the settlement, and how he is doing, and the hundreds of people who are injured and the other survivors as well. Brian Claypool, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate it so much.
Yes,
I have to get to a breaking.